August 12, 1985. 24 minutes past 6 in the evening. 12 minutes after taking off from Tokyo, a Boeing 747 is crossing the skies of Japan at over 7,000 meters with 524 people on board. And then, a bang. In a fraction of a second, the rear of the aircraft tears open. The pressurized air inside the cabin escapes with such violence that it rips away most of the vertical stabilizer, the giant fin on the tail that keeps the aircraft pointed forward, and along with it, it severs the 4 independent hydraulic lines that make the aircraft obey the pilot's commands, all 4 of them, at the same time. In that instant, that 747 became something Boeing's own manuals considered mathematically impossible. A 300-ton aircraft full of people, flying with no flight controls whatsoever. The pilots were still holding the control column, but the column was no longer connected to anything at all. What happened over the next 32 minutes is one of the most extraordinary stories of human endurance ever captured on a black box. 3 men trying to fly the unflyable, using the only thing that still responded: engine power. 520 people died that evening. To this day, it remains the deadliest accident involving a single aircraft in the entire history of aviation. But this story has 2 layers that almost nobody knows. The first, this tragedy did not begin in 1985. It began 7 years earlier, in an accident so small, so unremarkable, that nobody imagined it would ever matter. A mistake made in a maintenance hangar, a mistake that stayed hidden inside that aircraft, silent, for more than 12,000 flights. And the second, 4 people survived the crash, and one of them said that through the entire night on that mountain, she heard voices of other people still alive in the wreckage, voices that grew fainter and fainter, while rescue never came. This is the story of Japan Airlines Flight 123. To understand what tore that aircraft apart in 1985, we need to go back 7 years, to June 2nd, 1978. That afternoon, the very same Boeing 747, registration JA8119, was flying a domestic route, approaching Osaka Airport. But the descent came in a little too steep, and the correction came a little too late. The aircraft touched down with its nose too high. It's an accident known as a tail strike, when the tail of the aircraft strikes the runway during landing. 25 people were injured, one of them seriously, but nobody died. In the Japanese press, it was a footnote, a badly executed landing, a scare, and life moved on. But that impact damaged a component most passengers have never heard of. And it is the single most important component in this entire story. It's called the aft pressure bulkhead. Picture the inside of an aircraft like a fizzy drink can. The cabin is pressurized so people can breathe at 10,000 meters, where the air is far too thin, which means there is an enormous difference in pressure between the inside and the outside. The aft bulkhead is the lid of that can, a curved aluminium wall, shaped like a dome, fitted at the very back of the fuselage. It holds all of the pressurized air inside the cabin and stops it from escaping into the tail. If it fails, the air doesn't leak out. It bursts out. And that is exactly the component that cracked in the 1978 landing. Japan Airlines called in the manufacturer itself to fix it. Boeing sent a technical team to Japan to carry out the repair. And the procedure was well known, fully documented, and simple to describe. The cracked bulkhead was to receive a reinforcement part called a doubler. Literally, a plate that doubles the strength of the damaged area. A single continuous plate covering the crack, secured with 3 rows of rivets, 3 rows, distributing the load evenly across the entire joint. But that is not what happened. For reasons investigators were never able to establish with certainty, perhaps difficulty of access, perhaps time pressure, the technicians did not use a single plate. They used 2 separate plates, cut to fit. And here is the detail that killed 520 people. With the plate cut in 2, one of the halves was left secured by only 1 row of rivets instead of 3. From the outside, the repair looked perfect. It passed inspection. It passed every inspection that followed. year after year, because the doubler covered the very area that would have needed examining. The mistake was hidden underneath the very part meant to fix it. But on the inside, the maths was already running. Every time an aircraft takes off and climbs, the fuselage inflates slightly, like a balloon. Every time it descends and lands, it deflates. This is called a pressurization cycle. And with every cycle, the metal flexes microscopically. With one row of rivets doing the work of 3, the strength of that joint dropped to roughly 70% of what was designed. Boeing would later calculate that with that repair, the bulkhead would withstand approximately 10,000 cycles before fatigue cracks became critical. JA8119 was a special variant, the 747SR, a version developed specifically for the Japanese market, optimized for short, high-demand domestic flights. While a standard 747 might fly 1 or 2 long sectors a day, this aircraft flew several short hops daily between Japanese cities. In other words, it accumulated pressurization cycles far faster than the global average. Between the 1978 repair and August 12, 1985, JA8119 completed 12,318 cycles, more than 2,000 cycles beyond the calculated limit. With every takeoff, those invisible cracks advanced another millimeter. Now let's move to the day itself. August 12, 1985 was a Monday, and the whole of Japan was on the move. It was the eve of Obon, the traditional Japanese holiday, when families travel back to their hometowns to honor their ancestors. Trains, roads, and aircraft were all running at capacity. JAL Flight 123 was a domestic shuttle, Tokyo Haneda Airport, bound for Osaka. A short hop, under an hour, a flight so routine that many passengers simply bought their ticket at the counter on the spot. That evening, the aircraft was almost completely full. 509 passengers and 15 crew. 524 people, entire families, children returning from summer holidays, office workers heading home. Among them, the singer Kyu Sakamoto, one of Japan's most beloved artists. In the cockpit, an experienced crew, Captain Masami Takahama, 49 years old, with more than 12,000 flight hours, First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, 39, and Flight Engineer Hiroshi Fukuda, 46. One important detail on that flight, the pilot actually flying was First Officer Sasaki. He was in training to become a captain, and Takahama, an instructor, occupied the left seat, supervising. An entirely normal arrangement carried out thousands of times a day around the world. At 12 minutes past 6 in the evening, JAL123 lifted off from Haneda, bound for Osaka. 12 minutes later, at 12,000 feet and still climbing, the aft pressure bulkhead, repaired 7 years earlier, weakened with every one of the 12,300 flights that followed, reached its limit, 6:24 in the evening. The bulkhead ruptures, and the pressurized air from the entire cabin surges backwards into the tail section at a pressure that structure was never designed to withstand. The result is immediate and catastrophic. The pressure blows out the root of the vertical stabilizer and tears away roughly half of it. The entire tail fin vanishes into the sky, later falling into Sagami Bay. And with it, the hydraulic lines running through that area are severed, and this is where the tragedy is sealed. A Boeing 747 has 4 independent hydraulic systems designed precisely so that a single failure can never bring the aircraft down. If one fails, the other 3 take over. Redundancy is the religion of aeronautical engineering. But all 4 systems ran through the same section of the tail. Within seconds, the hydraulic fluid from all 4 systems drained away completely. The needles on all 4 pressure gauges dropped to 0. With no hydraulic pressure, nothing on the aircraft responds anymore. The ailerons on the wings, dead. The elevators, dead. The rudder, which no longer existed, irrelevant. The control column in the pilot's hands became a piece of metal connected to nothing. In the passenger cabin, the oxygen masks dropped. The decompression filled the air with mist, and the noise was deafening. In the cockpit, Captain Takahama took over the controls and declared an emergency to Tokyo Air Traffic Control, requesting clearance to return to Haneda. Control approved it, but the aircraft was not going anywhere the crew chose. Because without controls, an aircraft doesn't simply fall. It enters a phenomenon called a phugoid oscillation. The nose rises and the aircraft climbs. Climbing, it loses speed. Losing speed, the nose drops and it dives. Diving, it gains speed. With speed, the nose rises again, and the cycle begins over. JSIA L123 spent the next 32 minutes doing exactly that, climbing and falling in enormous waves, up to 1,000 meters in amplitude, in a cycle that repeated roughly every 90 seconds. At the same time, without its vertical stabilizer, the aircraft rolled from side to side without stopping. Imagine sitting in that cabin with an oxygen mask on your face for over half an hour. And this is where the crew did something extraordinary. They discovered, in real time and under maximum pressure, that one single control still remained on that aircraft: the engines. A 747 has 4 engines, 2 on each wing. By increasing power on one side and reducing it on the other, it is possible to make the aircraft turn. Increasing power on all 4 tends to raise the nose. Reducing it tends to lower the nose. It is a crude, slow, imprecise form of control, like trying to steer a truck by pushing on its bumpers. But it was all they had. And the black box recordings show 3 men working together without panic, in complete coordination. Takahama on the throttles, Sasaki assisting, Fukuda, the flight engineer, monitoring systems and calling out altitude aloud over and over to give his captain the reference the unstable instruments could no longer provide. At one point, they tried to lower the landing gear, hoping the extra drag would help stabilize the aircraft and reduce its speed. With no hydraulics, they had to use the alternative gravity release system. The gear came down. For 32 minutes, that crippled aircraft stayed in the air. 32 minutes is an eternity in an aviation emergency. Most catastrophic failures give pilots seconds. Simulators were later programmed with exactly the same conditions. Same failure, same aircraft, same parameters. Experienced pilots, told in advance what would happen, tried to repeat the feat. Almost none of them managed to keep the aircraft flying for as long. Meanwhile, in the passenger cabin, something profoundly human was taking place. Many people understood what was coming, and in those final minutes, they began to write. In notebooks, in diaries, on the back of sick bags, on the reverse of boarding stubs, farewell notes. Men wrote to their wives, fathers wrote to their children. One passenger recorded the exact time and described what he was seeing. One father left instructions about his children's education. Another simply wrote that he did not want to die and apologized. Several of those notes were found intact in the wreckage and returned to the families. Today, they stand as some of the most devastating documents in existence about what goes through a person's mind in their final minutes. And the most striking thing about almost all of them is their calm. They are not screams. They are goodbyes. At 6:55 in the evening, the aircraft had lost too much altitude and was approaching mountainous, broken terrain in Gunma Prefecture. The crew were fighting to keep the nose up using power alone. In the final recordings, the ground proximity alarm can be heard, and Takahama can be heard giving his last command to his crew, calling for the nose to come up. The final words recorded in that cockpit are words of effort, not of despair. All 3 of them worked until the very end. At 6:56 in the evening, the right wing struck the treetops on a mountain ridge. The aircraft rolled, struck the neighboring peak, and disintegrated on the slopes of Mount Osutaka. 520 people died, and 4 survived. The crash happened at around 7 in the evening, with summer daylight still in the sky. An American military aircraft in the area spotted the flames on the mountainside within about 20 minutes and transmitted the coordinates. Ground rescue teams only reached the wreckage the following morning, more than 12 hours later. The reasons for that delay are still debated in Japan today. The official account points to genuine difficulties. The site was a steep, densely wooded slope, more than 1,500 meters up, with no road access, a night rescue operation on that terrain, with the technology of the time, was judged too dangerous for the rescue teams themselves. The contested account is harsher. An American military team based nearby offered to descend to the site that same night by helicopter. The offer was declined, and Japanese authorities took over the operation, which only truly began at first light. There is no way to know with certainty how many lives could have been saved. One of the 4 survivors was Yumi Ochiai, 26 years old, an off-duty Japan Airlines flight attendant traveling as a passenger. She survived trapped between seats, injured and conscious throughout the entire night, and she later described how, in the first hours after the crash, she heard voices, cries, moans, calls for help coming from other parts of the wreckage. Through the night, the voices grew fewer, one by one. When rescue finally arrived at dawn, 4 people were still alive. Besides Ochiai, a mother and her 8-year-old daughter, Hiroko and Mikiko Yoshizaki, and a 12-year-old girl, Keiko Kawakami. Medical examiners later concluded that a number of people had survived the impact and died in the hours that followed. The investigation was led by Japan's Aircraft Accident Commission, with American participation, and it retraced the tragedy in reverse, piece by piece. First, they recovered the wreckage of the vertical stabilizer from the sea, which confirmed that the tail had failed while still in flight. Then they examined what remained of the aft pressure bulkhead. And there, beneath the doubler fitted 7 years earlier, was the answer. Dozens of fatigue cracks spreading outward from precisely the row of rivets that had been doing, alone, the work of 3. The final report was unambiguous. The cause was the improper repair of 1978. The failure of the bulkhead caused the decompression, which tore away the vertical stabilizer and severed all 4 hydraulic systems. Boeing publicly accepted responsibility for the faulty repair. And in Japan, the response came from within the country's culture of responsibility. The president of Japan Airlines resigned and went personally to the homes of bereaved families to apologize. The airline faced a crisis of confidence that lasted for years, but as with every great aviation tragedy, JAL 123 left behind a legacy that has saved an incalculable number of lives in the decades since. The first change was in how the world came to view structural repairs. It became clear that a badly executed fix can lie dormant for years, and that the reinforcement part itself can conceal the very damage it was meant to correct. Aging aircraft inspection programs were completely overhauled, with particular attention to repaired areas and to tracking by number of cycles rather than flight hours alone. The second change concerned the concept of redundancy. 4 independent hydraulic systems are worth nothing if all 4 run through the same place. That seems obvious today, but it was JAL 123 that made it obvious. Later, designs began physically separating the routing of critical systems and incorporating mechanisms capable of containing fluid loss. The third change was born from the crew's own achievement. The fact that 3 men kept an uncontrollable aircraft in the air for 32 minutes using engines alone opened up an entire field of research into differential thrust control. Research that would go on to save lives in later accidents involving loss of flight controls. And there is a fourth change, less technical and more human: the response to accidents in difficult terrain. The delay of that night forced a deep review of Japanese search and rescue protocols, with investment in night operations capability, coordination between civilian and military agencies, and mountain rescue training. Today, on the slopes of Mount Osutaka, there is a memorial. Every year, on the 12th of August, families climb the steep trail to light incense and leave flowers at the markers scattered across the exact spots where each victim was found. It is a hard walk, hours long. And they climb it anyway. Decade after decade, Japan Airlines still maintains a memorial center where real wreckage from the aircraft and some of those farewell notes are preserved. It is not a museum for tourists. It is a space where the airline's own employees are taken as part of their training, to see with their own eyes what is at stake when someone decides that 1 row of rivets fewer will not make any difference. Because this story is not about an aircraft that crashed. It is about one tiny decision made in a workshop by people who most likely went home that day believing they had done a good job. A decision that waited in silence inside the metal for 7 years and 12,000 flights. And it is also about 3 men who, faced with the impossible, did not give up for a single second. They could not save the aircraft, but every minute they kept that aircraft in the air was a minute that 4 people used to reach the ground alive. 520 people boarded that flight, believing they were taking the most routine aircraft in the world on the eve of a holiday to see their families. They never arrived. But every stricter inspection, every hydraulic line rerouted along a different path, every rescue team trained to climb a mountain in the dark, all of it exists in some measure because of them. That was the story of Japan Airlines Flight 123. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments, what struck you most about this story? For me, it's the 32 minutes. The idea that 3 people held in the air with their hands and with their engines, something engineering considered impossible to hold. If this video held you from start to finish, leave a like. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people who love real stories told in detail. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Until the next flight.